If your grocery bill makes you want to cry, try living a week like a medieval peasant with 10 dirt cheap meals that somehow kept people alive through famine, plague, and endless labor. Their secret weapon? The pot that never stopped boiling. No supermarkets, no fridges, no fancy kitchens, just grit, smoke, and survival. These humble dishes built empires and fueled the toughest workers in history. So how did they do it? Grab your spoon, because what you're about to hear will make you rethink what poor food really means. And trust me, when we reach number 1, you'll discover the medieval dish so unstoppable it could literally feed a family forever. Number 10. Pottage. Pottage was the backbone of peasant life, a thick, simmering stew that never truly ended. The pot lived on the hearth half meal and half institution. You scooped some, then topped it up with whatever turned up grain today, turn up tomorrow, onion ends whenever there were onion ends. Think of it as a rolling budget for the stomach. The base was cheap grains like barley, oats, or rye, boiled until they cracked and thickened the liquid into something spoon-standing. Into that went garden staples, leeks, cabbage, parsley roots, and on lucky days, a handful of peas, a sprig of sage, maybe a coin-sized piece of fat. It wasn't glamorous, it was dependable, and dependable is what keeps families standing when snow owns the road. Records from village digs suggest many households kept pottage alive several days at a time in cold seasons. Fresh fuel, same pot, same fire. In poorer years, it's simplified to grain plus roots, hot and plain, because hot and plain still beats cold and empty. There was class drift too. A manor kitchen might upgrade with wine and spice, while a cottage scented its pot with wild garlic and hope. But across the map, the logic never changed. Make it once, stretch it, feed everybody, again. Be honest. If you had one pot and a hungry crowd, wouldn't you do the same? And here's the kicker. That pot needed a partner, because pottage alone could not hold a household if there wasn't a daily supply of dry, portable fuel for the body, so we stepped to the food that filled more bellies than any other. Number 9. Bread. If medieval calories had a monarch, it was bread dark, dense, and brutally honest. Wheat was for the rich or lucky acres. Most peasants ate rye or barley loaves, sometimes stiffened with ground peas or beans, chestnut flour, or whatever bulked the dough cheaply. Grain went to the Lord's mill with fees that hurt. Flour came back, and loaves were baked weekly in communal ovens or as hearth flatbreads at home. First days, firm and hearty. Last days, tough enough to need dunking in pottage or ale. Records from England show working men could down a couple of pounds a day, 60% or more of total calories, because 12 hours in a field doesn't run on salad. There was risk. Damp rye could host ergot, the fungus behind Street Anthony's fire, which turned bread into a nightmare. Nobody knew microbes. They only knew some years bread made whole villages tremble. Yet bread stayed sacred. Waste was sin. Theft meant real punishment because bread was life. Now picture the end of the week. The loaf hard as a brick, the pot running thin. What then? You stretch the last handfuls into the leanest defense your kitchen can mount, which leads straight to the dish peasants loved only when the choice was nothing. Number 8. Gruel. Gruel is the line between hungry and hanger. It's grain diluted to the edge of honesty, a scoop of crushed oats or barley drowning in water until the heat bullies it into a liquid that is barely food. In famine years, monastery kitchens noted stretching a cup of grain to feed a crowd, not because it was noble, but because it was the only math that worked. Gruel shows up everywhere. Discipline rules. Fast days in cloisters, sick rooms where chewing is fantasy, weaning bowls for babies in households with no concept of baby food. You eat it salted if you can afford salt, you drink it otherwise. Writers called it thin, dogs allegedly snubbed it unless starving, and yet it kept pulses going long enough for better days to arrive. And when even gruel scraped the bin clean, peasants reached for a root that could take abuse from soil and weather and still come up swinging. You've seen it in markets, you've ignored it for years, but it once sat next to every hearth for a reason. 7. Turnips. Turnips are winter's blunt instrument. Cheap seed, quick growth, forgiving nature. Poor soil, short season, neglected plot. Turnips shrug. Roots go into stews and mashes. Greens go into the pot earlier in the year. Flowers can even be nibbled in spring. Villages dug pits lined with straw and soil that kept the crop edible into spring. A refrigerator you didn't have to invent. Contemporary accounts and manorial notes suggest small garden plots produced hundreds of pounds without much drama, enough to bridge families through months when fields pretended to be stone. The taste is honest and slightly peppery. Reheated too often, it perfumes the house in ways nobody loves, but hunger doesn't negotiate. Folk healers recommended turnip poultices for skin, juice for coughs. Whether or not it cured, it comforted. Still, even a mountain of turnips turns monotonous. To keep meals from tasting like the same afternoon forever, peasants leaned on a duo that brought bite, crunch, and sour. One that grew huge heads, and one that grew, well, everywhere. 6. Cabbage and onions. Cabbage is a yield machine. Big heads from small spaces, outer leaves plucked as needed, and a core that keeps pushing if you don't bully it. The miracle wasn't only harvest, it was storage. Whole heads lasted weeks in a cool room. Salted or soured cabbage rode out entire winters, which is why pits full of old stalks still show up in the ground. Onions are the companion that does everything right. They grow in lousy dirt, deter pests along borders, and sit quietly in a basket for months, daring you to find a better all-purpose flavor. Together, they turn bland pots into meals, especially with a thumb of fat from somewhere, anywhere. They even appear in odd places like tax lists and debt payments, because value is value, whether gold or brassica. Yes, they have consequences audible to neighbors. Yes, monasteries sometimes timed menus to avoid acoustics, but for peasant kitchens, this pair added identity to calories and made repetition bearable. Still, delicious aroma isn't muscle. Fields get plowed with shoulders, not scent glands, and for that you need real protein that doesn't walk away and doesn't cost a cow. Fortunately, the next staples grew protein on sticks. 5. Peas and beans. Dry legumes are winter insurance in a sack. They fix nitrogen when alive, which means they'll grow where grain already stole the soil's wallet, and once dried, they last years if kept dry. Peasants soaked them overnight, simmered them to softness, and mashed them into walls of fuel, salted when possible, herbed when lucky. Monasteries relied on them because church calendars put meat off the table on a shocking number of days. Householders relied on them because you can't swing a scythe on bread alone. The math works. Dried peas are protein-dense by medieval standards, and a corner of a field can produce enough to matter. Downsides exist. Yes, the music of beans is real. Yes, some village rules quietly discourage them before solemn gatherings. But if you want peasants to finish harvests, you put peas in their bowls. And when even beans aren't enough or permitted, you look to animals, but you don't get steaks. You get what the rich didn't want, and you make it feed a crowd. 4. Offal and scraps. Offal is where thrift becomes art. Lords got loins, towns got roasts, peasants got heads, hearts, lungs, livers, blood, feet, and ears, and turned those into soups, sausages, fry-ups, and jellies faster than spoilage could catch them. A pig's head became cheeks and crackling, and a pot of broth that flavored 3 other meals. A cow's offal, distributed among families, stretched meat day across a neighborhood. Blood-bound grain into puddings. Stomachs held mixtures that became ancestral to dishes still famous now. Hunting law and custom meant small game sometimes reached the cottages, especially in hard winters. If it couldn't kill you, it was food. Was less a joke than an operating principle. Court records show stealing pluck, heart, liver, lungs could be punished as harshly as stealing a more glamorous cut because scarcity doesn't care about glamour. Offal is quick cuisine because it has to be. No iceboxes, no second chances. And when calendars banned meat for holy reasons, villages pivoted en masse to something salty, portable, and everywhere. The seas ran silver, a fish so common it became a punchline and a lifeline at once. Number 3. Salted herring. Herring is medieval fast food. Catch, salt, barrel, ship, and eat. Fleets hauled staggering numbers during peak seasons, and salting began right on the boats because freshness had hours, not days. Inland monasteries bought them by the hundreds and thousands to get through fast days without breaking rules. Farmhouses far from any coast still had fish because salt plus barrel equals distance. White herring was simply salted. Red herring was smoked after salting until it turned ruddy, stronger in flavor and able to travel even farther. It's ready at room temperature and practically unspoilable if you respect the salt, which means a worker could eat, drink, and get back to the scythe with minimal fire. Of course, it's monotonous. Of course, herring breath became a medieval meme. Of course, cooks tried mustards, vinegars, and onions to make it feel new. But when half the year exiled meat, herring kept bodies moving. Salted fish also created a new problem: thirst. And that problem points straight at a truth modern people often miss about medieval life. Water was dangerous in the wrong places, so the safest daily drink wasn't water at all. It was something gentler than wine, lower than beer, brewed everywhere by everybody.